Mark, Robert, Michael Wahlberg. That's the full name. But depending on when you first noticed him, you probably knew him as something else entirely. Maybe Marky Mark? Maybe that guy from Boogie Nights? Maybe the intense cop from The Departed? Or maybe just that incredibly disciplined, 4 a.m. waking, business-minded Hollywood machine. But here's the thing. None of those versions tell the full story. Not even close. Because before the fame, before the muscles, before the billion-dollar empire, there was a version of Mark Wahlberg that Hollywood wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And for good reason. Boston, early 1980s, not the polished, tourist-friendly version you see today. Rougher, edgy, less forgiving. Wahlberg grows up in a working-class Irish-American family. 9 kids, which means attention is limited, supervision is negotiable, and survival instincts kick in early. His parents split when he was young, and like a lot of kids in that situation, structure didn't exactly stick around. What did stick around? The streets. Now, when people say troubled youth, it usually sounds like a cliché. A bit of teenage rebellion, maybe some bad grades, a few wrong choices. Wahlberg, different category. By 13, he's already deep into drug use. Cocaine, not experimenting, using. By 14, he's dealing, fighting, getting pulled into a cycle that rarely ends well. School, dropped out. Future plans, not really a thing. And then comes the moment, the kind of moment that usually defines a life permanently. At 16, Wahlberg commits a violent assault. Actually, 2. In separate incidents, one victim is left seriously injured. Wahlberg is arrested, charged, and sent to prison. Not a warning, not a slap on the wrist. Prison game over, right? For most people, yeah, that's the point where the story locks in. The label sticks, the options shrink, the path narrows. But here's where things get unusual. Prison doesn't break him, it wakes him up. Now let's not romanticize it. This isn't some instant transformation montage where everything suddenly makes sense, but something shifts. Call it perspective. Call it fear. Call it the realization that the road he's on has a very predictable ending, and it's not a good one. He serves about 45 days, gets out, and for the first time, there's a decision to change direction. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but deliberately, and the first step. It's not acting, it's music, early 90s. Enter Marky. Mark and the Funky Bunch. Yes, that's real. Yes, it worked. And yes, it's a little surreal looking back. The group drops good vibrations, and somehow it explodes. Number 1 hit. Suddenly, Wahlberg isn't just known, he's everywhere. Music videos, magazine covers, Calvin Klein ads, that iconic underwear campaign. Yeah, that's him. Confidence dialed up to maximum. Abs doing half the talking, but here's the catch. This kind of fame, it's fragile. It's built on image, on trends, on moments, and moments pass. The music career peaks quickly, then starts to fade, and this is usually where things fall apart. One-hit wonders don't typically reinvent themselves, but Wahlberg isn't done pivoting. Next stop, Hollywood. Now Hollywood loves a good transformation story, eventually. At first, not so much to casting directors, Wahlberg isn't an actor. He's a rapper trying something new, and historically, that doesn't inspire confidence. His early roles reflect that uncertainty. Small parts, supporting characters. Films where he's not the focus. The Basketball Diaries gives him some visibility, acting alongside Leonardo DiCaprio, but he's not the headline. Not yet. Then comes Renaissance Man again, present, but not dominant. Hollywood is watching, but it's not convinced. And then 1997 happens. Boogie Nights. This is the turning point. The gamble, the role that could either redefine him or completely backfire. He plays Dirk Diggler, a young man rising through the adult film industry, fueled by ego, ambition, and eventually self-destruction. It's not a safe role, it's not a typical leading man introduction, but it works. Not just works, it lands hard. Because for the first time, people see something unexpected. Depth, vulnerability, actual acting. Suddenly the narrative changes. Marky Mark fades. Mark Wahlberg, actor, shows up. Now here's where it gets interesting, because breaking through is one thing. Staying relevant, completely different game. The late 90s and early 2000s become a proving ground. Three Kings shows he can handle ensemble casts. The Perfect Storm proves he can hold his own in big-budget productions. The roles are getting bigger, the confidence is building, but there's still a question hovering in the background. Is he a serious actor, or just someone who had one really good performance? Hollywood doesn't answer that question quickly. It waits, it tests, and sometimes it lets you fail publicly. And fail he does. Not everything hits. Not every role connects. Some performances land flat, some films disappear. And in an industry where momentum is everything, inconsistency can be dangerous. But Wahlberg adapts. Instead of chasing prestige alone, he starts playing the long game. Enter producing. This is where things quietly shift again, because while audiences are focused on what's happening on screen, Wahlberg is building something behind the scenes. One of his biggest moves, Entourage. Loosely based on his own experiences, it becomes a cultural hit. Suddenly, he's not just part of Hollywood, he's shaping how Hollywood is portrayed. And that matters, because power in this industry doesn't just come from acting, it comes from control. Then comes 2006. The Departed, directed by Martin Scorsese, stacked cast, high expectations. This is not a film where you can coast. Wahlberg plays Sergeant Dignam, sharp, aggressive, unapologetically confrontational, and somehow in a film filled with heavyweights, he stands out. Not quietly, not subtly, loudly, memorably. The performance earns him an Academy Award nomination, and just like that, the question disappears. He's not just credible, he's respected. But here's the thing about Hollywood. It has a short memory when things go wrong, and things do go wrong, the happening happens. And let's just say it doesn't go well. Critically panned, widely mocked. Even Wahlberg later distances himself from it. It becomes one of those projects actors don't exactly highlight on their resume. And this is the pattern: high point, low point, recovery, repeat. But instead of resisting it, Wahlberg leans into it. He diversifies. Action films, check. Comedy, check. Drama, still in the mix. The Fighter brings him back into serious critical territory. It's gritty, personal, award-winning. Then comes commercial dominance with projects like Transformers, Age of Extinction, massive box office numbers, global reach, not always critically adored but financially undeniable. And at this point, something becomes very clear. Wahlberg understands the system. He knows not every film needs to win awards. Some just need to win audiences. Meanwhile, outside of acting, the empire grows. Business ventures, fitness brands, restaurants, investments, the schedule gets tighter, the discipline gets stricter. The 4 a.m. wake-ups become part of his public identity. It's almost myth-like at this point. But no matter how polished the present becomes, the past doesn't disappear, it resurfaces. Discussions about his early life crimes come back into public conversation. Questions about accountability, about forgiveness, about whether success changes how people view past actions. It's complicated. It doesn't have a clean resolution, and that tension becomes part of his story. Because unlike a lot of Hollywood narratives, this one doesn't tie itself up neatly. It stays messy. And maybe that's why it sticks. Because at its core, this isn't just a story about success. It's a story about direction. About how far someone can move from where they started, from a teenager spiraling into violence and addiction, to a global star, to a businessman, to a figure that people still debate. And that last part matters, because it means the story is still alive, still evolving, still being written in real time. Today, Mark Wahlberg isn't just surviving Hollywood. He's operating above it, choosing projects, building brands, managing an image that balances discipline, ambition, and reinvention. He's no longer chasing opportunities, he's creating them. But if you trace it all back, every success, every failure, every pivot, it all connects to that early turning point, that moment where things could have ended, but didn't. And maybe that's the real reason his story works. Not because it's perfect, but because it isn't. Because it proves something most Hollywood stories try to smooth over. That success doesn't erase the past, it just builds on top of it. And sometimes that foundation, it's unstable. But if you keep building anyway, you end up with something a lot more interesting than a straight line to the top. You end up with a story people can't stop watching. And in Hollywood, that might be the most valuable role of all.